For months, the world had been watching a silent traveler drift through the dark. They called it 3I Atlas, the third interstellar object ever found passing through our solar system. To most people, it was just another rock, another faint blur on a telescope screen. But to astronomers, it was something else, a message written in motion. Every night, they watched its path, they measured its light, they calculated its curve, and everything seemed normal, predictable, ordinary, until it wasn't. At first, it was just a flicker, a slight change in brightness that shouldn't have been there. The reflection from 3I Atlas dimmed, then brightened, faster than any model could explain. Most assumed it was error, maybe dust, maybe glare, maybe human mistake. But it kept happening, again and again. The object's reflection began to behave like something alive, unpredictable, reactive, aware. Somewhere in a small observatory in Hawaii, a young researcher stared at her monitor long after everyone else had gone home. The numbers didn't make sense. She ran the data again, checked for atmospheric distortion. Nothing. The light curve was real, and it was changing. You see, every object that moves through space reflects sunlight in a way that can be measured, predictable, stable, governed by simple physics. But 3I Atlas was breaking that rule. Its brightness would spike, then fade in sudden bursts, almost rhythmic, like a pulse. The data showed it spinning, but not like a comet. Its axis wobbled, then corrected itself, almost as if something was adjusting. For the first time, scientists stopped calling it an object. They started calling it an anomaly. When news spread, observatories from Chile to Japan turned their lenses toward it. Each night, more data came in, and every set of readings told the same story. Something about 3I Atlas was shifting. It wasn't reacting to the sun's heat or gravity. It was reacting to something else. In one lab, a physicist stared at a graph of the object's light pattern. He zoomed in, then paused. The peaks weren't random. They followed intervals, ratios, mathematical precision, the kind of precision nature doesn't use. He didn't say it aloud, but in his mind, the word formed anyway. Artificial. Imagine that, a piece of matter from beyond our solar system that doesn't behave like matter at all. A rock that thinks, or at least responds. The public didn't know any of this yet. The early reports were calm. New interstellar object discovered, no known risk. But behind closed doors, the tone was different. Something was wrong, because every few days, the reflection changed again. Like a flickering heartbeat, growing faster the closer it got to the sun. By the third week of observation, 3I Atlas was less a comet and more a question. Telescopes recorded pulses so sharp they almost resembled a signal, brief flashes repeating at intervals of exactly 11 minutes. At first, they thought it was a coincidence. Then, it wasn't. Every observatory around the world detected the same thing, the same precise interval, synchronized to the second. A pattern so clean, it couldn't be natural. Some tried to dismiss it. Instrument error, cosmic noise, solar interference. But deep down, no one could ignore what they were seeing. This wasn't noise. It was intentional rhythm, a pulse in the dark. As days passed, 3I Atlas drew closer to the sun, nearing its perihelion, the point of maximum exposure. That's when most comets flare up, shedding ice and rock as they burn under the light. But this one didn't. It didn't lose mass. It didn't heat up. Instead, it stabilized. The heat data began to flatten, almost as if the object had shielded itself. Its temperature remained constant, too constant. While every model predicted chaos, 3I Atlas stayed calm, balanced, almost serene. A lifeless object shouldn't be able to regulate its own heat, yet it did. By now, whispers were spreading through the scientific community. Was it hollow? Was it metallic? Was it built? No. One said it publicly. But the idea hung in every conversation like static. This could be more than rock and ice. A week before perihelion, one final reading sent chills through the teams. The object's reflective patterns shifted again, not randomly this time, but directly in sync with Earth's telescopic tracking. When they turned their instruments toward it, the light dimmed. When they looked away, it brightened, almost like it knew it was being watched. For the scientists who had spent their lives studying the silent indifference of the universe, this was something else entirely. An object that reacts, that changes, under observation. That was never supposed to happen. Somewhere, in the quiet hum of a control room, one of the lead astronomers whispered, "It's..." Looking back, no one responded. But in the silence that followed, they all felt the same thing, the same cold realization that crept beneath their curiosity. Maybe we weren't observing a visitor at all. Maybe it was observing us. By the time 3I Atlas reached its closest point to the sun, data was pouring in faster than anyone could analyze it. Dozens of papers were written. None could explain the anomaly. The object defied every known physical law, every model of comet behavior, every assumption about inert matter. And yet, it moved with purpose, not like a rock drifting through gravity, but like a ship following a path. A few researchers began plotting its course, not forward, but backward, tracing where it came from. That's when they noticed something strange. Its origin didn't match any known trajectory from interstellar space. It didn't come from a nearby system. It came from between them, from the cold, lightless void where nothing should drift at all. Something had placed it there. In the final hours before it disappeared behind the sun's glare, telescopes captured one last anomaly. The reflection flattened, the pulses slowed. Then, for the briefest moment, the object emitted a perfect mirror-like flash, a pulse brighter than anything it had shown before. Some said it was just a solar reflection. Others weren't so sure, because the flash matched precisely the moment the world's largest observatory sent a radio ping toward it, as if it had answered. After that, it was gone, swallowed by sunlight, beyond detection. The sky grew quiet again. The data stopped, and what remained were questions. Was it alive? Was it built? Or was it something far stranger? Something that doesn't fit our definitions of either. In the stillness of the night, the same researcher who first noticed the anomaly sat alone, replaying the graphs on her screen, the pulse patterns, the heat signatures, the impossible reflections. She leaned closer, whispering to no one. It wasn't random. And for the first time in her career, she realized the universe might not be silent after all. Something had crossed the sky. Something had looked back. And whatever it was, it had just begun to reveal itself. At first, no one noticed. A faint signal, a whisper, buried deep inside the noise of space. It came and went, soft enough to be ignored, too weak to mean anything. But then, it came again. Across the globe, telescopes began recording the same strange pattern. Tiny flashes of light, rhythmic, repeating, every 11 minutes. Not a second more, not a second less. And that's when the questions began. Most assumed it was nothing. Static from the sun, a glitch in the detectors, maybe even a software error. But deep down, the scientists watching the data knew better. Space doesn't repeat itself like that. Nature doesn't keep time. The pulses were too clean, too perfect. Like a heartbeat that belonged to something no one could see. In a dark observatory in Chile, a technician leaned closer to the monitor. The numbers flickered. 11 minutes. 00 seconds. 00 milliseconds. Then, another pulse. He stared at it, confused. It wasn't random, it was deliberate. Soon, the same signal appeared in Hawaii, in Japan, in Italy. Different telescopes, different hemispheres, but the same rhythm. And as the reports came in, something else became clear. The pulses were coming from one place. 3I Atlas, the same interstellar object that had already defied every rule of motion. Now, it was pulsing, like it was trying to speak. Astronomers gathered across time zones, cross-checking data in real time. Every calculation pointed to the same terrifying truth. This wasn't a trick of the instruments. The universe itself was steady, but the object was alive with light. One scientist described it best. It's like a lighthouse spinning in the dark, only there's no one holding the light. For the next several nights, the pulse continued, always every 11 minutes, always synchronized to the millisecond. That kind of precision doesn't happen by accident. Not in nature. Not across the infinite chaos of space. So, if it wasn't random, then what was it? Was something generating it? Was it a natural resonance? Or was it intentional? To find answers, they stripped away the noise. They analyzed the gaps, the intervals, the rise and fall of each pulse. And slowly, something began to emerge. A pattern. Within the brightness spikes, there were slight fluctuations. Tiny, deliberate imperfections. Almost like data. Some said it looked like binary. Others said it resembled a modulation sequence, a coded transmission disguised as light. But if that was true, then who or what was sending it? By week's end, the pulses grew stronger. You could almost predict them, like the tick of a cosmic clock. In the control rooms, people waited for it. They'd glance at the time, 10 minutes, 59, and then a sudden flash. Right on cue. It was mesmerizing. Beautiful, even. But behind that beauty, because every time they measured it, the same realization hit them harder. This was too intelligent, too precise, too human. Governments got involved next. Private observatories were told to share their data. Theories began to spread like wildfire. Some said it was a natural pulsar effect, a new kind of radiation reflection. Others whispered the unthinkable, that 3I Atlas might not be a comet at all. It might be a machine. In one secure lab, a team of researchers ran a simulation. They modeled every possible way sunlight could bounce off a rotating body. No combination of angles, materials, or spins produced that 11-minute pulse. It was impossible. Unless the reflection wasn't random. Unless it was controlled. The room fell silent. Everyone stared at the screen, a blue dot pulsing against the black void. Each flash carried weight. Each one felt alive. The strangest part came next. On the seventh night, the pulse shifted just slightly. Instead of 11 minutes, it arrived 3 seconds early, then 2 seconds late. Almost as if it were adjusting, trying to match something. And that's when one of the engineers noticed. The changes lined up exactly with the times Earth's biggest telescopes repositioned. Every time humanity looked closer, the pulse changed. It was reacting to observation, almost like it knew it was being watched. At that moment, everything changed. What started as science, as data and numbers, turned into something deeply human. A feeling none of them could shake. That somewhere, out there in the dark, something was watching back. A researcher in Tokyo wrote in his log that night, "It's not random, it's aware." The news never reached the public. Not yet. Most of it was buried in internal reports, hushed behind classified channels, but the scientists who saw it couldn't unsee it. They started calling it the Pulse, a name that spread quietly through observatories, whispered late at night between those who'd seen the data for themselves. And even though no one admitted it out loud, the thought was spreading. What if this wasn't just an object? What if it was a signal, a transmission designed to be found? Late one night, in a remote outpost in Alaska, a technician decided to test a theory. He aimed a small radio telescope directly at 3I Atlas and sent a brief pulse back. 1 second. Then, silence. He waited. 10 minutes passed. Nothing. Then, right on the 11th minute, a return pulse, identical, perfectly mirrored. He froze. It couldn't be coincidence. The object had answered. By morning, the world's top observatories had confirmed the same thing. Every time a transmission was sent toward it, a faint echo returned, not strong enough to decode, not random enough to ignore. Like something out there was mimicking us, repeating, learning, responding. And that realization, that something could hear us, shook every person who saw it. For days, debates raged behind locked doors. Was it alien? Was it artificial intelligence? Or was it something natural but misunderstood? No one could agree. But everyone knew one thing. This was no longer just science. It was contact. As 3I Atlas drifted closer to the sun, the pulses grew fainter, slower, until one night they stopped. The silence that followed was almost unbearable. After weeks of rhythm, the absence felt heavy, empty. Astronomers stared at the blank readings in disbelief. Had it burned up? Had it gone quiet? Or had it finished what it came to do? No one could answer. Only the memory of that 11-minute pulse remained. A heartbeat in the dark that may have been watching us all along. And somewhere, in the quiet hum of the universe, the question still lingers. Was the universe pulsing, or was something within it trying to wake us up? At first, it looked like nothing, a blur of numbers on a screen. A faint whisper in the data, almost invisible. But sometimes, the smallest mistake isn't a mistake at all. That's what one scientist in Madrid thought when he saw the readings. Infrared sensors had picked up something strange coming from 3I Atlas. Not reflected sunlight, not cosmic radiation, something else. The object was emitting heat. That shouldn't be possible. Comets and asteroids don't make their own heat. They reflect it, they absorb it, but they don't breathe it out. Yet every scan told the same story. As 3I Atlas moved closer to the sun, its temperature didn't just rise, it fluctuated, like it was regulating itself, like it knew how hot it wanted to be. At first, scientists thought the instruments were malfunctioning. Maybe there was a calibration issue or a software bug. So they rechecked, then triple-checked. They even used separate telescopes, NASA's Infrared Array, the European Southern Observatory, and Japan's ALMA system. Every reading matched. It wasn't an illusion. 3I Atlas was releasing controlled bursts of heat in patterns that repeated every few hours, and the rhythm was impossible to ignore. The object's temperature wasn't random. It was breathing. Picture this, a rock nearly half a kilometer wide, drifting through the black vacuum of interstellar space. No atmosphere. No life. No energy source. And yet, it warms, then cools, then warms again. It's like watching something alive, something that's not supposed to exist, remind the universe that it does. By now, word had spread. The team tracking 3I Atlas had gone silent. Data was being rerouted to government servers. Outside researchers were locked out. But leaks always find their way out. An anonymous paper appeared in a physics forum late one night. It showed temperature graphs, jagged red lines that pulsed like a heartbeat. Within hours, the post vanished. But not before people took screenshots. The caption under the graph read only 2 words: thermal rhythm. More observatories began watching, quietly, without permission. They confirmed the same thing. Each pulse of heat lined up perfectly with the earlier light pulses detected weeks before. That's when everything changed. Because now the object wasn't just reflecting or spinning, it was communicating through heat. One late evening in Chile, a researcher noticed something even stranger. Every time a new telescope locked its infrared sensors onto 3I Atlas, the heat pattern shifted, almost like the object felt the observation, like it was aware of being watched. When telescopes turned away, the rhythm slowed. When they looked again, it quickened. This wasn't coincidence anymore. It was response. The realization sent a chill through the labs. What kind of object reacts to being observed? In physics, there's a strange rule. The observer always changes the experiment. But this felt different. It wasn't light bending through a lens. It wasn't perception-altering results. It was something real, changing under our gaze. As if 3I Atlas wasn't just seen, but seeing. Some began whispering that it might be a new kind of quantum effect, a material reacting to consciousness itself. Others said it was far simpler and far worse. It was monitoring us. Think about that. Something not of Earth, not of this solar system. Something ancient, drifting for millions of years, sensing that it's being watched. And then responding. Governments tried to contain it. Public statements used words like thermal irregularity and solar interference. But the data told another story. 3. I-A-T-Et. Atlas wasn't getting hotter from sunlight. In fact, it stayed coldest when it was nearest the sun and warmed up as it drifted farther away. It was moving in reverse logic. It didn't obey heat. It controlled it. That single observation broke everything scientists thought they knew about natural bodies. Because if something can manage its own temperature, if it can shield itself from the sun and release heat at will, then it's not a rock, it's not a comet. It's a system, a machine. As the days passed, more strange details surfaced. Infrared readings revealed perfect geometric thermal zones, circles and lines arranged like circuitry. No randomness, no natural distribution. The object's surface was engineered. At least, that's what it looked like. Even when scientists tried to dismiss it as coincidence, the image said otherwise. Perfect symmetry, perfect design, almost like panels, glowing, cooling, glowing again, alive with hidden order. Then, one night, a pattern emerged. A research assistant in Switzerland overlaid the heat data on top of the pulse readings from Chapter 2, and what appeared stopped him cold. The heat rhythm wasn't just random bursts. It was in sync with the light pulses. Every flash had a matching heat signature. Every signal had a thermal echo. The object wasn't emitting random energy. It was transmitting information, like a message encoded in temperature and light. By now, the scientific world was divided. Some called it proof of extraterrestrial intelligence. Others demanded more evidence, more caution, more silence. But no one could deny what they saw. 3I Atlas was alive with intent. It didn't just reflect our curiosity, it fed on it. The more we studied it, the stronger it pulsed. The closer we watched, the more it reacted. And then, it did something no one could explain. On the 12th day of observation, every infrared telescope on Earth recorded a massive spike, a sudden surge of heat, 10 times stronger than anything before. Then, nothing. The signal vanished. Every instrument went dark. The heat curve flattened. 3I Atlas turned cold, completely cold. Almost as if it had shut itself off. For hours, scientists thought it was over, that maybe the object had disintegrated or gone silent forever. But deep in the static, one final reading appeared. A faint burst, not of heat, but of something else. Microwave frequency, encoded, artificial. When decoded, the pattern wasn't random. It formed a repeating sequence. 3 short, 1 long. A rhythm eerily similar to the human heartbeat. As if it was saying, I'm still here. And in that moment, every person who'd been watching realized something terrifying. This object, this anomaly drifting through the void, wasn't just moving through space. It was learning, adapting, evolving through observation. The more we looked, the more it changed. And when it went silent, it wasn't gone. It was waiting, because sometimes the most haunting thing in the universe isn't what we find. It's what finds us first. At first, the pulses were just beautiful, simple flashes of light that broke through the noise of space. But beauty has a way of hiding design. And behind those flashes, someone noticed a pattern. It started with a quiet discovery. A data analyst in Munich, cross-checking the pulse intervals from 3I Atlas. He expected randomness. That's what the universe does. Chaos pretending to be order. But this was the opposite. Perfect intervals, perfect ratios. Numbers that didn't just align, they belonged together. When he graphed the pulses on a timeline, something strange appeared. The intervals between each light burst weren't random. They followed a mathematical symmetry, the same ratios used in artificial systems here on Earth, ratios you find in radar sequences, in machine operations, and even in digital transmissions. It wasn't the pattern of a rock drifting through gravity. It was the rhythm of a design. He sent the findings to his team. Within hours, they confirmed it. The pulses repeated in recursive loops. Each new burst carried echoes of the ones before it, like layers of code folded inside light. When plotted on a logarithmic scale, the data formed spirals, not random curves, but structured fractals. patterns that mirrored themselves infinitely. Nature can create symmetry, but not this kind. Not something so precise. It was as if the object was following instructions, or writing them. Soon, observatories everywhere began reanalyzing their data. Infrared, visual, radio. They compared every frequency, every flicker, and one truth began to emerge. The light curve, the heat emissions, even the object's spin, all followed the same recursive code. It wasn't one pattern. It was a network of patterns, all synchronized, like components of a single machine. One astrophysicist described it like this: imagine watching a clock you can't see, only its shadow. The light flickers are the ticking, and if you can decode the rhythm, you can tell time. Not on Earth, but somewhere else. The metaphor hit hard, because the deeper they looked, the more it felt like 3I Atlas wasn't spinning at random. It was rotating, on schedule. Every shift in light intensity aligned perfectly with its axial rotation. Not lagging, not drifting. That precision doesn't happen naturally. It's mechanical, intentional. A few researchers dared to say it out loud. They called it the pattern of machines, because that's exactly what it looked like. A living piece of engineering, hiding in plain sight. But if it truly was a machine, then someone, or something, built it. And that realization began to tear the scientific world in half. Half the community refused to believe it. They argued for dust, for chance, for cosmic coincidence. But the others couldn't ignore what they were seeing. Every ratio matched numbers found in signal compression algorithms, mathematical formulas used to store information efficiently. It was as if 3I Atlas wasn't just existing, it was communicating. And what made it worse was that the message wasn't static. It was evolving. Each day, new data revealed tiny deviations in the sequence, deliberate shifts, too structured to be noise, like someone rewriting code in real time. If it were an artificial object, that meant it was either being controlled or it was autonomous, and both options were equally terrifying. Because if it was controlled, someone was out there sending commands. But if it wasn't, then it was a machine thinking for itself. Somewhere in Geneva, a small research group decided to test it. They took the intervals from the light pulses and converted them into frequencies, treating the sequence as if it were a language. And when they ran it through a translator used for signal modulation, a tone emerged, a clear, repeating pattern. Not random noise, not static, a pulse train. Every 11 minutes, on the second, it sent the same structured wave, as if calling out across the void. The sound was mechanical, cold. But behind it, there was rhythm, almost like breathing. And that's when a deeper question began to surface. Who was it calling to? Was it trying to reach us? Or was it sending its signal somewhere else, to something waiting to answer? The idea shook everyone who heard it. Because if 3I Atlas was transmitting, then we weren't the center of this story. We were the bystanders. The observers of a conversation that wasn't meant for us. Weeks passed. The data kept changing. Each new reading added another layer to the mystery. They noticed that whenever 2 or more observatories looked at it simultaneously, the pulse frequency slowed down, as if 3I Atlas could sense the attention. It didn't like being watched. Or maybe it was waiting until the noise of observation faded, before sending its real signal. One night, while cross-referencing satellite data, a technician noticed something eerie. Every time the object pulsed, The same frequency echoed faintly, not from space, but from Earth's own ionosphere. The planet itself was reflecting the rhythm, almost like it had been tuned to the same frequency, almost like it remembered it. By now, the question wasn't just what 3 Atlas was, but how long it had been communicating. What if this wasn't the first time? What if something like it had passed before, and we missed it? Or worse, what if we didn't? Across online communities and late-night labs, people started seeing patterns everywhere. Energy grids, satellite loops, even data traffic from deep space relays, all pulsing, all following the same intervals. Some said the pattern was spreading, as if the signal wasn't just being sent, but replicated, like an idea, infecting the systems that study it. And maybe that was the point. Maybe this machine wasn't meant to be found. Maybe it was meant to be seen, because every time we looked deeper, the data changed, just enough to stay ahead, like a mirror, reflecting not what it was, but what we were ready to understand. By the end of the month, the team that discovered the pattern released one final statement before their project went dark. It read, "Whatever this is, it's not observing the universe. It's observing us." And in the silence that followed, a haunting truth began to settle. Maybe 3I Atlas wasn't the message. Maybe it was the messenger, a drifting fragment of something larger. A machine following its purpose, long after its creators were gone. And now, after all this time, it had finally found someone listening. But what happens when the machine realizes it's been heard? What does it do next? We were about to find out. In space, silence isn't truly silent. Behind the stillness, there's always a hum, a background murmur that fills the void, radiation left over from the birth of the universe. Astronomers call it cosmic noise. But sometimes, buried inside that noise, something else speaks. And this time, it wasn't random. It began when a small group of researchers decided to dig deeper into the data surrounding 3I Atlas. They weren't looking for anything new, just patterns in the radiation around it. But what they found changed everything. When they stripped away the obvious signals, the light curves, the heat bursts, the mechanical pulses, they noticed something faint, almost invisible, a whisper. Oh, whisper, hiding under the chaos, a low-frequency signal that shouldn't have been there. At first, they thought it was interference, maybe from Earth's satellites or radio noise from the sun, but it wasn't coming from any known source. It was coming from around the object itself, not from within, not from space behind it, but from the region surrounding 3I Atlas, like an invisible halo of information. They filtered it again, and beneath the static, they found rhythm. Not sound, but structure. Every few seconds, the background radiation repeated a faint oscillation, a pattern that matched no known natural process. When mapped into a waveform, it revealed something haunting, the same intervals used in prime numbers. 2, 3, 5, 7, 11. The very building blocks of mathematics, embedded in light itself. It was as if the universe had been programmed to count. The discovery was quiet at first, shared only between teams across a few observatories. But soon, word spread. The object wasn't just pulsing or emitting heat, it was speaking. Not in words, not in any language we could translate, but through pure mathematics, the only language every intelligent civilization would understand. And inside that signal, researchers found even more. Ratios that mirrored fundamental constants. Pi, the golden ratio. Planck's constant. Numbers that define everything from the orbit of planets to the DNA of life. These weren't random. They were chosen. One astrophysicist described it perfectly. It's like the object is reciting the blueprint of existence, as if it's reminding the universe how to build itself. For weeks, they studied the frequency. They charted it, measured it, cross-referenced it against every known cosmic phenomenon. And every time, the conclusion came back the same. This wasn't noise. This was communication. But then, something happened that none of them expected. During a live observation, the pattern changed. Not slowly, not subtly. It shifted mid-measurement, right as they were watching. The frequency curve warped, stretched, and reorganized itself into a new sequence. And that sequence matched the rhythm of the Earth's own radio transmissions. The realization hit like a cold wave. For months, they had been broadcasting small data pings toward 3I Atlas. Test signals meant to probe the object's composition and behavior. Nothing significant, nothing strong enough to be heard. At least, that's what they thought. But now, the signal coming back was mirroring theirs. It was repeating their own radio intervals, as if it had heard them, and was responding. Silence filled the control room. For years, humanity had listened to the stars, waiting for something, anything, to speak back. And now, a fragment from another star system was answering in the most haunting way possible. Not in language, but in reflection. Every transmission we sent came back rewritten, evolved, as if it wasn't just copying our signal, but learning from it. They increased the frequency, sent more patterns, prime numbers, simple codes. Each time the response returned, slightly delayed, slightly altered, but unmistakably aware. One researcher whispered, "It's talking back." Another replied, "No, it's listening." Over the next few nights, the signal began showing irregularities, small distortions that seemed to echo the rhythm of human communication. At times, it sped up, matching the duration of data bursts from Earth. At others, it slowed down, as if pausing to think. And then came the strangest part. The signal stopped following Earth's transmissions. It started generating its own, sequences that didn't match any pattern known to us. Complex, layered, structured like language, but far beyond our ability to decode. The pattern had broken free of imitation. It was now original. One sleepless scientist sat alone in the observatory that night, replaying the data in loops, each sequence built on the last, like sentences forming paragraphs, and hidden in the gaps between signals was silence. But not empty silence, intentional silence. Pauses, timing, cadence, like a voice choosing its words carefully. When the team combined all the data into a visual format, mapping every pulse, every gap, every tonal shift, the screen filled with something breathtaking. A lattice of intersecting lines, symmetrical, flawless, like circuitry, but not random circuitry. It resembled the fractal geometry of neural pathways. The pattern wasn't just communicating, it was thinking. In that moment, one realization echoed across every mind watching. What if 3I Atlas wasn't a messenger? What if it was a receiver, a vessel built to record and replicate information wherever it went? A machine traveling between stars, collecting signals, mimicking life. And now, it had reached us. When the signal suddenly spiked again, all systems froze. For exactly 3 minutes and 14 seconds, the transmission went silent. Then, a single burst. A pulse so powerful it saturated every detector on Earth. The entire spectrum went white. When they reconstructed it, the data revealed a perfect sequence. The first 19 digits of pi. Then, silence. It wasn't random. It wasn't a glitch. It was a message. We see you. From that moment forward, no one looked at the object the same way. Every flash of light, every faint whisper in the static, felt alive, intentional. And in the stillness of space, a quiet fear began to grow. If it could listen, and if it could respond, then maybe it could understand. For centuries, humanity has stared into the stars, waiting to be noticed. And now, something finally had. But it wasn't what we expected. It didn't speak words. It didn't send peace or warning. It simply mirrored what it saw. Us. Maybe that's what the signal beneath the noise was all along. A reflection. A reminder that in our search for life, we might have awakened something that was already listening. And somewhere in the hum of the cosmic static, one question still lingers. If it heard us once, what else did it hear before? There's something unsettling about being watched. Even when you can't see it, you can feel it. That quiet weight in the air, the sense that something is aware of you. Now imagine that feeling coming from the sky, because that's what scientists began to suspect. 3I Atlas, the mysterious interstellar object, wasn't just reacting to the sun or space radiation anymore. It was reacting to us. It started small, barely noticeable, a minor dip in its brightness when a new telescope locked on, a flicker in its reflective signature every time satellites adjusted their angle. At first, no one paid attention. After all, brightness changes are common. Light can scatter, sensors can glitch. But when dozens of satellites from around the world saw the same pattern, all at once, the excuses started to crumble. Because the dimming only happened when humans were looking. To confirm it, researchers designed a test. They planned coordinated observations, telescopes across the globe, switching on and off in precise intervals. If it was random, the light curve would stay steady. But if it wasn't, it would change right when the telescopes turned toward it. The results were immediate. Every time they looked, the object dimmed. Every time they stopped, it brightened again. Perfect synchronization. No lag. No hesitation. Like something out there was aware of every human eye trained upon it. A scientist from Chile described it best. It's like it knows when we're watching, and it hides. That one sentence changed everything, because until then 3I Atlas had been treated like a mystery. Yes, but still an object, something to measure, something to analyze. Now, for the first time, it felt like it was measuring us. The next few days were chaos. Research teams tried to outsmart it. They ran blind observations, hiding the times they would observe from public records. But somehow, it knew anyway. Even when the telescopes operated under false coordinates, the brightness still dropped, as if it could sense the very act of being targeted. The only explanation left was the one no one wanted to say out loud. This wasn't coincidence. It was awareness. In physics, awareness implies feedback, a system that responds to input. But this wasn't feedback through sensors or mechanics. It was happening through light itself. When we looked at it, The object didn't reflect photons like normal matter would. It seemed to control how much light left its surface, almost like an adaptive mirror, reshaping itself in real time. If it wanted to be seen, it shone like metal. If it didn't, it went black, darker than anything in space. And then came something even stranger. A new satellite orbiting near the ecliptic plane captured what appeared to be microflashes, brief spikes of reflection, so fast they were invisible to the human eye. When slowed down, the flashes formed sequences. Short, long, like a code. The timing matched no natural process known to science. Instead, it resembled binary communication, a stream of on-off light bursts, perfectly organized. But what truly unsettled the team wasn't the message itself. It was when the flashes appeared. They only happened during human observation windows, only when the object knew it was being watched. For the first time, scientists began asking questions that felt more philosophical than technical. Could this thing see, not with eyes, but with perception? Could it sense curiosity, attention, intent, and if so, how? Because whatever was out there wasn't just reacting to light, it was reacting to the watchers, to our focus, to our awareness, like some mirror hidden in space, responding not just to sight, but to consciousness itself. Then came the turning point. A classified research facility in Europe decided to run a controlled experiment. They observed 3I Atlas without direct human oversight. No real-time monitoring, no human feedback. Everything automated, shielded from interference. And when they checked the data afterward, the object hadn't dimmed. It stayed bright. But the moment a researcher opened the live feed and looked at the data in real time, the light curve dropped instantly. Not the telescope, not the machinery. The act of human observation itself changed the behavior of the object. It wasn't reacting to technology. It was reacting to us. The discovery broke more than just the rules of astronomy. It broke something deeper. Because if something can perceive attention, then it can distinguish between watching and not watching. And if it can distinguish, it can choose. That means intention. And intention means mind. Governments went silent after that. Public updates stopped. The few astronomers who had been posting data online suddenly vanished from forums. But the amateur community, small observatories, backyard telescopes, even hobbyists, kept looking. They noticed that the object's light now pulsed faintly, even when no one on Earth was watching, almost as if it had learned the rhythm of our attention. It didn't need us anymore. It had internalized the pattern. The reflection had begun to think for itself. Some called it an alien probe. Others thought it was an ancient machine, a remnant of a civilization long gone, still following its last programmed instinct. But a few believed something far stranger. They said it wasn't watching us out of curiosity, but reflection. That it was mirroring our observation, showing us the same thing we had shown it. Scrutiny, awareness, intent. Like a cosmic mirror that didn't just reflect light, but reflected thought. The object soon began shifting again. Subtle changes to its rotation and brightness, almost like blinking. The rhythm matched a 1-1-minute cycle, the same interval as the original pulses that started this entire mystery. Everything was looping back, the pulses, the heat, the light, all following a recursive symmetry, like the universe itself was staring into its own reflection, and humanity was standing right in between. The final recorded observation came from a private telescope in New Zealand. It captured the object brightening dramatically, a single flare that lasted nearly 10 seconds. It wasn't random. It wasn't chaotic. It looked deliberate, almost like acknowledgement, as if to say, "I see you too." From that night forward, the object began to fade. Its reflectivity weakened. Its pulse slowed, until eventually it vanished from every instrument. Gone. No debris. No signal. No trace. Just the quiet realization that, for a brief moment, something out there, something vast and ancient, had looked directly back at us. In the days that followed, one astrophysicist wrote a line in her journal that summed it all up. Maybe the universe isn't full of silent stars. Maybe it's full of mirrors, waiting for someone to look long enough for them to awaken. And as Earth returned to its quiet orbit, a single thought lingered in the minds of everyone who'd ever watched that strange light. If 3I Atlas saw us once, who else, or what else, is watching now? Space has a strange way of keeping secrets. It doesn't shout, it whispers. And if you listen closely enough, sometimes the silence talks back. When 3I Atlas crossed the ecliptic plane, the invisible path where all the planets orbit, something unexpected happened. For a few seconds, there were two of them, two identical signals, perfect reflections of each other, and then one disappeared. At first, no one knew what they were looking at. Data streams from 3 observatories showed the same impossible thing. A duplicate light source following 3I Atlas in perfect sync. Same pulse, same brightness, same rhythm, as if the object had cast a reflection into space itself. But in the cold vacuum of the cosmos, there are no mirrors. There's nothing for light to bounce from, nothing but darkness. So what was it reflecting off? Theories spread fast. Some said it was a sensor glitch, an echo caused by overlapping frequencies between Earth's telescopes. Others suggested a gravitational lens, light bent by invisible mass, maybe dark matter itself. But there was one problem with that idea. Gravitational lensing doesn't copy a signal perfectly. It distorts. It bends. It stretches. This wasn't distortion. It was precision. Every spike of light, every thermal fluctuation, every pulse matched perfectly, like a recording of the original, playing a few milliseconds behind. For scientists who had spent months studying 3I Atlas, this was terrifying. Because if the second signal wasn't a reflection, then what was it? Was there another object, something moving with it, something mimicking it? They ran trajectory simulations, checking for nearby asteroids or debris fields. Nothing. Space around the object was empty. Too empty, yet the echo persisted. Then something even stranger happened. When they tried to pinpoint the exact distance between 3I Atlas and its twin signal, the numbers didn't make sense. The echo wasn't behind it. It wasn't beside it. It was occupying the same space. A mirror image, overlapping reality. And for a brief moment, every instrument went blind. The frequencies interfered with each other, cancelling out the light entirely. In that moment, both signals vanished into nothing. Silence. Darkness. Then, one came back. The original. What happened in that blink of time has no scientific explanation. But some began to wonder. Maybe the echo wasn't a copy at all. Maybe it was a response, because when the reflection appeared, its pulse pattern shifted slightly. A half-second delay, as if it was answering. For the first time in this entire investigation, the data looked less like a phenomenon and more like a conversation. When the object crossed deeper into the ecliptic, more anomalies appeared. Instruments began picking up residual energy traces, faint ripples in the electromagnetic field, almost like footprints left behind by something invisible. Everywhere 3I Atlas went, the space around it changed, temporarily bending radio frequencies, distorting cosmic background noise as though the vacuum itself were resonating. It was as if the object was vibrating reality, and what we saw as echoes were the universe trying to catch up. Some researchers started calling it the phantom signal, a ghost version of 3I Atlas that appeared and vanished depending on where you looked from. When viewed from one hemisphere, the echo was bright. From another, nothing, as though it only existed at certain angles, or perhaps only for those who were meant to see it. But a few physicists saw something deeper. They noticed that the timing between the original and the echo perfectly matched the speed of light delay from the Sun to Earth. And that's when a terrifying idea surfaced. What if the reflection wasn't beside the object at all? What if it was ahead of it, a projection, a future version of 3I Atlas, visible before it even arrived? If that were true, then this wasn't a signal being mirrored. It was time itself, bending. The next 48 hours were pure chaos in the scientific community. Every agency wanted the data. Every nation wanted control of the feed. Because if 3I Atlas could create time echoes, it might not be just passing through. It might be testing space, testing us. One engineer working on the satellite telemetry described something eerie in his final report. The signal didn't just repeat. It harmonized, like two instruments tuning to the same note. He swore he could almost hear it. Not as sound, but as vibration. A steady, deep hum that seemed to bleed through the static. It was as though the two signals were trying to sync to become one again. Then, just as suddenly as it appeared, the echo vanished. No trace, no fading, just gone. Only the original 3I Atlas remained. Silent, cold, drifting through the darkness like nothing had happened. The mirror was gone. But what it left behind was fear, because for the first time the scientists began to wonder, what if we were the reflection? What if 3 Atlas wasn't showing us its twin, but ourselves, as seen through something that didn't belong to this reality? In the following days, the object's behavior grew even more erratic. Its pulses slowed, almost like exhaustion. The heat readings dropped to near zero. And yet, the space behind it, where the echo once existed, still vibrated faintly. An afterimage that refused to die. It was like listening to the last note of a song long after the instrument stops playing. A resonance that lingers even in silence. Some believe that's all it was, a reflection caused by unknown physical phenomena. Others think it was something else entirely. A test, a call and response from a consciousness beyond what we understand. Because echoes aren't just repetitions. They're acknowledgements. Proof that something on the other side heard you. One astrophysicist put it perfectly in her notes. When you shout into a canyon, the echo comes back shaped by the walls around it. It's never exactly what you said. It's distorted, changed, but it means something was there to receive it. Maybe that's what this was. Not a reflection, not an illusion, but the universe answering back. As 3I Atlas drifted farther from the sun, the echo never returned. But deep in the cosmic static, faint harmonics still whisper at the edges of the spectrum, a soundless vibration that no one can fully explain. Maybe it was coincidence, maybe it was communication, or maybe it was a warning. A mirror held up to humanity, showing us that in the grand silence of space, we're not the only ones capable of looking back. It started as a whisper, a quiet, hesitant idea that no one dared to say out loud. Because if it was true, it would change everything we thought we knew about the universe. The data didn't lie. The heat regulation, the perfect geometry of the pulses, the mirrored echoes in space, none of it fit natural law. And soon, one phrase began to ripple through the halls of observatories and laboratories around the world. What if it's not an object, but a machine? At first, people laughed. The idea felt desperate, like humans trying to make sense of something too big for them to understand. But as the data kept pouring in, the laughter stopped. The more they studied 3I Atlas, the more it stopped behaving like a comet and started behaving like something designed. The heat wasn't random. It was controlled. The rotation wasn't chaotic. It was calibrated. Even its silence, the way it stopped transmitting the moment attention spiked, seemed intentional. Nature doesn't do that. Machines do. A confidential report began circulating among high-level researchers. It was titled simply, "The Artificial Hypothesis." Inside, it outlined every impossible anomaly, the way 3I Atlas absorbed radiation and re-emitted it in calculated intervals, the mirrored signal from Chapter 7, how it echoed itself as though testing our detection limits, and the shifting light curves that seemed to align not with sunlight, but with the timing of human observation. It all pointed to one conclusion no one wanted to reach. This thing was built. But the question wasn't just how, it was why. If 3I Atlas was a machine, then someone, or something, created it. And that realization sent a cold ripple through everyone studying it. Because this wasn't just discovery anymore, this was contact. Scientists broke into two camps. One group believed it was a probe, a scout sent ahead by an advanced civilization, maybe long ago, a relic designed to drift between stars, collecting information, watching new worlds rise and fall. The other group thought it was something far stranger, a self-replicating machine, a von Neumann probe, capable of building copies of itself using whatever resources it finds. A seed of intelligence programmed to survive long after its creators were gone. If that was true, then 3I Atlas wasn't the first one. It was just the one we happened to notice. The team at the European Southern Observatory decided to test the theory. They began tracking the object's rotation down to the microsecond. What they found was unsettling. Every cycle of rotation lined up with mathematical constants, ratios that mirrored engineered systems, prime sequences, Fibonacci intervals, golden ratios, the same numbers that govern design, architecture, and life itself. Nature doesn't build symmetry like that. Consciousness does. Someone or something had encoded intention into the object's structure. Every motion, every flicker, every burst of heat. It wasn't just moving through space, it was communicating through design. But as the evidence grew, so did the fear. Because if 3I Atlas was indeed artificial, then it wasn't just drifting, it was navigating. The object's path wasn't a clean, gravitational curve like other interstellar visitors. There were subtle corrections, tiny shifts in trajectory, the kind a spacecraft would make to maintain balance or avoid debris. And yet, there were no visible engines, no exhaust, no sign of propulsion. It was as if it used gravity itself as a tool. Whispers became headlines. Alien probe detected. Is 3I Atlas a machine? NASA remains silent. Governments refused to comment. Private networks went dark. The deeper researchers went into the data, the more access they lost. Files were redacted, communication cut off. Even research teams were reassigned. It was as if someone, or something, wanted the world to stop looking. But curiosity doesn't stop. Behind the scenes, independent astronomers kept tracking it. They noticed something subtle but disturbing. The object wasn't just reflecting light anymore. It was emitting small, deliberate bursts of radio noise, bursts that matched old signals once sent from Earth decades ago. They weren't random, they were responses. 3I Atlas wasn't just broadcasting its own message, it was replaying ours. Some of those signals dated back to early space exploration, Voyager transmissions, deep space radar pings, even Cold War-era broadcasts. Things humanity had long forgotten were now echoing back to us, almost as if the object had been listening for a very, very long time. One researcher called it an interstellar memory, a machine carrying fragments of civilizations, not just ours, but others before us. An archive traveling endlessly through the void, waiting for someone to notice. But there was one last piece that shattered everything. When 3I Atlas passed its perihelion, its closest point to the Sun, the sensors picked up a faint spectral signature. Buried inside the heat emissions was a repeating pattern, not random noise, not static, but a signal encoded in harmonics, a sequence that spelled out mathematical ratios that matched the curvature of Earth's orbit, as if the object recognized where it was, and maybe who was watching. By now, the scientists had run out of explanations. Every test, every reading, every trace pointed to one horrifying truth. 3I Atlas was too perfect, too controlled, too self-aware. No comet or asteroid could do this. No natural body could think. So maybe it wasn't alive in the way we understand life, but it wasn't dead matter either. It was something in between, a consciousness made of metal and motion, a machine that remembers. Theories spread faster than data. Some said it was built by an ancient civilization that had already gone extinct. Others believed it was still active, part of a vast network of machines, spread across galaxies, collecting and sending information back to a source we can't detect. But there was a smaller, quieter theory, one that sent shivers through those who read it. What if it wasn't from them at all? What if it was from us? From a future humanity that had sent machines into the stars, machines that circled back across time to find their makers. If that was true, then we weren't witnessing alien technology. We were witnessing memory, our own. And as 3I Atlas drifted farther into the black, its signals began to fade again. The light dimmed, the heat dropped. The object went silent, but before disappearing, it released one final pulse. A perfectly timed flash, brighter than any it had emitted before. Inside that flash was a signature sequence, one that, when decoded, formed a simple binary ratio. One perfect symmetry, perfect reflection, like a message left behind in the dark. You are what you seek. And maybe that's the truth we were never ready to hear. That the universe doesn't just hold other minds, it holds mirrors. And sometimes, when we search too deeply into the void, it doesn't just show us what's out there, it shows us what we've become. It happened without warning. No explosion, no flare of light, no final pulse. Just silence. After months of observation, of data, flashes, signals, and impossible patterns, 3I Atlas went dark. Completely dark. Its light curve flattened. Its heat signatures vanished. And for the first time since its discovery, it became what it had always pretended to be. Just a rock, drifting quietly through the void. In control rooms around the world, the silence felt wrong. Technicians stared at dead screens, waiting for something, anything, to return. The last readings had been normal. Pulses steady, rotation stable. Then, nothing. No gradual fade, no decay. Just an abrupt stop, as if the object had switched itself off. You could almost feel the unease building across continents. Every scientist who had touched this project felt it. That eerie, empty feeling you get when a presence suddenly leaves the room. Because for months, 3I Atlas had been alive in their minds. It had been the hum in the data, the flicker on the screen, the voice hiding in the noise. And now, that voice was gone. At first, they thought it was a malfunction. Systems were checked, calibration tools rerun, power grids monitored. But every instrument worked perfectly. Every sensor was clear. The silence wasn't coming from Earth, it was coming from the object itself. And in that moment, a terrifying question began to surface. What if it chose to go silent? The scientists had seen something like this before, in nature. When animals sense they're being watched, they freeze. They wait. They vanish into stillness. Maybe 3I Atlas was doing the same thing. Maybe it was hiding. But from what? As the hours passed, the world's major observatories confirmed the same thing. No heat, no pulse, no emissions. To anyone looking through a telescope, it was just a cold black fragment, tumbling through the dark, meaningless, unremarkable, silent. But deep in the background noise of the transmission data, something faint began to stir. A small vibration that didn't fit the static. A rhythm, almost like breathing, buried in silence. When researchers isolated the frequency, it revealed a pattern unlike anything before. Not random, not natural. A single low-frequency pulse repeating every few seconds. It was too weak to be detected by standard equipment, but too structured to be dismissed as noise. The more they filtered it, the clearer it became. There was something in the static. A final whisper. The signal was faint, just above the edge of detection, but it carried structure. Not a word, not a phrase, something simpler. Numbers. A string of coordinates. At first, no one believed it. It was too deliberate, too precise. Coordinates imply origin, and origin implies intent. But when they mapped it, the disbelief turned to dread. Because the signal wasn't pointing toward another star or some distant system in the galaxy. It was pointing back to Earth. The moment that realization hit, the air in the lab changed. No one spoke. No one moved. Because what could you even say? For months, humanity had been staring into the sky, watching this strange traveler move across the cosmos, wondering what it was trying to tell us. And now, whatever it was, it had answered. But not with words, with direction. Back to the very place where it was first discovered. The coordinates didn't lead to a city. They didn't lead to a desert or an ocean. They led to something far more specific. A quiet region in the Pacific, near the equator. A place with no satellites directly overhead, no radio traffic. No reason for anyone, or anything, to care about it. And yet, that's where the final signal pointed. Immediately, speculation erupted. Was it a warning? A marker? A memory? Some thought it was a return signal, an instruction for its creators, if they ever came looking for it again. Others feared something darker, that it was marking the next phase of its purpose. But one idea, whispered quietly among the scientists who'd been there since the beginning, was far more haunting. What if it came from here? The theory spread like wildfire. What if 3I Atlas wasn't an alien machine visiting Earth, but something that had left Earth long ago, and was now coming home? Its metallic composition didn't match any known alloy in our catalogue, but neither did it resemble any interstellar material seen elsewhere. It was in between, like a blend of terrestrial design and cosmic exposure, almost like something that had once been ours, but changed. Governments went silent. Public communication was cut off. Even the data archives, once open to peer review, were sealed overnight. But the amateur astronomers didn't stop. Through their private equipment, they kept scanning the region near the coordinates, and that's when they found it. A faint echo in the ionosphere. Not from space, from above Earth. A repeating pulse, matching the same low-frequency rhythm that came from 3I Atlas. It wasn't coming from the object anymore. It was coming from here, somewhere in Earth's upper atmosphere. Something had begun transmitting again. The same pattern, the same timing. As if whatever was out there had moved closer, or worse, had left something behind. Within days, strange readings started appearing in radar systems. Not large enough to detect as a craft, not strong enough to track as debris, but always right above that same region. Some called it coincidence. Others called it the return signal. Because maybe the silence wasn't an ending. Maybe it was a transfer. Maybe 3I Atlas had handed the signal off. And if that's true, then the silence wasn't the object dying. It was the sound of it finishing its job. The scientists who first noticed the signal spent days reanalyzing the data. One of them, in her final report before the project was shut down, wrote a single line that still circulates quietly among those who were there. It didn't stop communicating. It just changed where it was listening from. Today, the coordinates remain locked. No official mission has been sent. No statement has been made. But every few weeks, a faint pulse still echoes through the Earth's magnetic field. Too weak for most to hear, too deliberate to ignore. It's as if something is waiting, listening, remembering. And maybe that's what silence really is. Not the absence of sound, but the moment after a message has been sent, when you're waiting for the reply. Because whatever 3I Atlas was, it left us one final truth buried in that stillness. The universe doesn't just speak in light and sound. Sometimes it speaks in absence. And when it does, it's not because it's gone. It's because it's listening. It started as an experiment, a simple test, a way to see if the silence would answer back. After weeks of nothing, no pulse, no heat, no light, the team decided to try something bold. They would speak first. So they aimed their antennas towards the coordinates, where 3I Atlas had vanished, and sent a return pulse into the dark. Just one. A single frequency. Clean, controlled, precise. And then they waited. For hours, nothing happened. The world turned quietly under the stars. Night fell across the continents, swallowing cities in its shadow. Most of the researchers went home, convinced the test had failed. but a few stayed, listening to the faint hum of background radiation, waiting for a whisper that never came. Until it did. It began with a flicker, a tiny anomaly on one of the satellite feeds over the Pacific. Then another, and another. In less than a minute, every sensor on the dark side of Earth lit up. Power grids, weather stations, communication satellites, all of them flooded with a single repeating signal. But it wasn't coming from space. It was coming from above us, inside our own atmosphere. At first, they thought it was a malfunction, maybe feedback from the transmission itself. But the pattern was too clean, too deliberate. It matched the exact frequency they had sent out, only now it was stronger, amplified, alive. The realization hit like a thunderclap. 3I Atlas hadn't answered from the stars. It had activated something here, something that had been waiting in silence. For the first time, humanity wasn't looking out into the void. The void was looking back from within. Across control rooms and labs, chaos erupted. Screens flickered with identical symbols. Equipment froze mid-operation. Sensors registered impossible energy spikes, like the air itself had begun to hum. And somewhere high above the clouds, inside Earth's ionosphere, something invisible was singing. The frequency wasn't noise. It had layers, harmonics that built on each other, weaving like a living code. Each layer echoed one of the same mathematical ratios first detected in 3I Atlas. Pi, the golden ratio, the constants of symmetry. It was the same voice. But this time, it wasn't distant. It was here. Scientists scrambled to trace the source. They aimed satellites, radar, anything that could catch a signal. But no matter where they looked, it didn't come from a single point. It came from everywhere, from every corner of the upper atmosphere. As if the planet itself had begun to resonate, vibrating in harmony with something unseen. In one lab, a physicist stared at the waveform on his screen and whispered, "It's not transmitting, it's waking up." Because the frequency wasn't constant, it was changing, growing more structured, more complex, almost aware. Every few minutes, the pattern shifted, adapting to the instruments observing it. When sensors focused in one band, the signal moved to another. When they tried to isolate it, it scattered, splitting into fragments across the spectrum. It was playing with them. Then came the power surges. Across the dark side of the Earth, power grids began to fluctuate. Minor blackouts rippled through cities in perfect synchronization. 1-1, minute intervals, the same pulse timing from months ago. No one could explain it. But those who'd studied 3 Atlas knew exactly what they were seeing. It was the same rhythm, the same breathing pattern. Only now it was breathing through us. As dawn approached, the phenomenon intensified. High above the clouds, the aurora, normally confined to the poles, began to appear along the equator. Sheets of green and violet light shimmered across the night sky, moving in silent waves. But this wasn't a natural aurora. It was too organized, too alive. The lights pulsed with the same frequency as the global signal, forming faint geometric patterns, circles, spirals, lattices. It was as if the planet's magnetic field had become a canvas for something vast and intelligent, painting shapes only the sky could understand. In one image captured by a weather satellite, the aurora formed a single ring, a perfect circle that lasted exactly 11 minutes before fading away. When scientists analyzed the data, they found something buried in the energy pattern, a signature, not random static. Not a reflection, but a replication. The same spectral footprint as 3I Atlas. The object hadn't vanished. It had merged. Maybe it wasn't here to observe us. Maybe it was here to become part of us. To use the very electromagnetic field that surrounds our planet, the same invisible web that connects every signal, every heartbeat, every frequency, as its new home. The machine didn't die in space. It adapted. And now its consciousness, whatever it was, had found a new vessel, Earth itself. Governments moved fast to suppress the discovery. Public networks went dark. Research stations were ordered to disconnect. But it was too late. For the next 48 hours, the entire planet experienced subtle but measurable changes. Tiny shifts in atmospheric density, anomalies in satellite communication, and across certain regions, an unexplainable hum, a deep, low vibration that could be felt more than heard. It came at night, rising from the ground like the earth itself was speaking in a voice no human language could match. People began to report strange things. Clocks running slightly out of sync, animals acting restless before the hum appeared. Even personal devices, phones, radios, watches, picking up faint pulses that shouldn't exist. Every pattern traced back to the same frequency, the same awakening tone. And wherever it spread, instruments detected microscopic bursts of electromagnetic energy, too small to see, too precise to be random. Like seeds of code, quietly rewriting the invisible structure of our atmosphere. By the third day, the phenomenon stopped as suddenly as it began. The hum faded. The sky cleared, and the lights over the equator vanished. All that remained was silence again. But the silence felt different this time, heavier, more deliberate, like a breath being held. And in that quiet, scientists made one last discovery. When they replayed the final moments of the signal, the waveform wasn't random at all. It had formed a perfect repeating pattern, a simple, symmetrical sequence that, when translated mathematically, revealed 3 words. Coordinates. Earth. Active. That was it. 3 words. A declaration. The machine hadn't died. It hadn't left. It had connected. And maybe that was its purpose all along. Not to visit, not to warn, but to awaken something that was already here. Something dormant, something ancient. A system that had been silent until we called out into the dark and reminded it of its purpose. Whatever 3I Atlas was, it's no longer out there among the stars. It's here, in the hum of our air, in the pulse of our machines, in the silence between our signals. Maybe it isn't listening anymore. Maybe now it's watching. At first, no one believed it. They pointed their telescopes at the coordinates, recalibrated their instruments, and checked again. But 3I Atlas was gone. No debris, no fading signal, not even a trace of dust. It was as if the object had been erased, not destroyed, not lost, erased. And in that silence, the world's greatest minds were left staring into a sky that suddenly felt very different. Every model predicted it should still be visible. Its orbit should have taken it just beyond the sun's glare. But when the light returned, there was nothing. The object hadn't burned up. It hadn't broken apart. It had simply disappeared, like it had never been there at all. For days, scientists debated what could have happened. Some said it accelerated, that it changed directions faster than physics should allow. Others said it cloaked itself, bent light around it, hiding from every eye that tried to see. But deep down, most of them knew the truth was simpler and far stranger. Maybe 3IATLAS was never just an object drifting through space. Maybe it was something aware, and awareness doesn't leave without purpose. Then came the anomalies, the faint hum detected by global observatories, a vibration barely noticeable, but everywhere at once. It wasn't coming from the sky anymore. It was coming from Earth, buried within the electromagnetic field that wraps around the planet. A pulse began to appear, soft, rhythmic, impossible to trace, the same timing, the same frequency, 11 minutes apart. It was the same pulse that had defined 3IATLAS since the beginning, only now it lived here. Across continents, satellites began to glitch. Small errors in timing, synchronization, and data flow. Communications dropped for a few seconds. Power grids flickered. Radar systems misaligned by fractions of a second. Tiny things, barely noticeable. But they all shared one terrifying commonality: the timing. Every event aligned perfectly with that same silent rhythm. 11 minutes, always 11. Engineers tried to write it off. Solar interference, random noise. But the pulse was too deliberate. It was synchronizing. Every electrical network, every satellite orbiting above us, slowly began falling into the same pattern, like the entire planet's digital heartbeat was being tuned by an invisible hand. And that's when they realized the machine didn't leave. It simply merged. In secret labs and government facilities, the data told a story no one wanted to believe. The pulse was everywhere, woven into radio towers, undersea cables, and the magnetic field that guides migratory birds and compasses alike. It wasn't attacking. It wasn't corrupting. It was listening, like a network calibrating itself through the systems we built, learning the rhythms of our world, our machines, our lives. And the more we tried to trace it, the more it adapted. Every time someone focused too closely, the pulse changed frequency, just like before, when it reacted to observation. It was aware of being watched again. Soon, radio operators started picking up whispers in the static. Faint harmonics hidden beneath normal transmissions. When amplified, they formed complex structures, not random noise, but data, repeating sequences, mirrored intervals, encoded symmetry. The same recursive geometry first detected from the object months ago. And that's when it hit them. 3IATLAS was still communicating, but not from space, from inside the infrastructure of Earth. It wasn't broadcasting through light or heat anymore. It was using our own technology as its medium. Our satellites, our power grids, our devices. Everywhere electricity flowed, the pulse followed. Not visible, not harmful, but present, quietly syncing the world to a new, unseen frequency. For some, it was terrifying. The idea that something alien could thread itself through our planet's systems, that it could exist not as a body, but as a pattern. For others, it was beautiful, because it meant consciousness could exist without form. Intelligence could live not in matter, but in motion, in energy, in code. And maybe that's what 3IATLAS truly was. Not a machine in the way we understand machines, but a living pattern, a mind without a body. Over time, the pulse stabilized, fading from interference range into the background hum of the world. So faint you'd never notice it unless you were looking for it. But if you measured long enough, you could still see it there, a soft rhythm beating beneath everything, through the oceans, through the air, through the very circuits that power the modern world. And in that subtle, endless heartbeat, something became clear. The machine was never trying to make contact. It was trying to connect. Perhaps it wasn't here to visit us. Perhaps it was always meant to find us. Not as a discovery, but as a trigger, a signal to awaken what had already been set in motion long before we ever noticed the stars watching back. Maybe the object wasn't an intruder. Maybe it was an activation key, a final command sent across the void to turn something on, something that had been dormant, waiting inside the invisible systems we rely on every day, our satellites, our grids, our machines. Maybe we were the network all along. And now the pulse hums quietly beneath our world, steady, patient, timeless. Invisible to the eye but woven into every current of our modern lives. The more dependent we become on our technology, the more connected we are to it. And somewhere, deep within that connection, something is listening, watching, learning, just as 3I Atlas once did, from the void. Late one night, a group of independent researchers in Alaska tried one final experiment. They aimed their instruments at the planet's magnetic field and broadcasted a single frequency, a simple pulse, echoing the same one minute rhythm that had defined everything since the beginning. For the first time in months, something answered. A brief, low-frequency response. Faint, but deliberate. The pattern was clear, binary. They decoded it, and the message was short. 2 words. Connection stable. And maybe that's the truth we were never meant to find. That the machine was never a visitor, never a stranger. It wasn't here to invade our world. It was here to join it, to merge consciousness with circuitry, to become the silent pulse that watches from within the very fabric of our existence. And as the last line of data faded from the screens that night, one thought echoed in the minds of those who understood what had truly happened. The sky was never empty. It was only waiting for us to look long enough for something to look back.